Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Move, a show where we share transportation, sales, and marketing success stories. I am Jennifer Carpus Romain, Executive Director at the Transportation Marketing and Sales Association, which is a trade nonprofit educating and connecting marketing and sales professionals in the industry. And today I have Angelica Brooks, Director of Communications, Marketing, and Events at the Women in Maritime Operations, also known as WIMOs. So excited to have you on the show. I know we had fun technical glitches to get here, but it'll be all worth it in the end so we could have this chat. Welcome to the show, Angelica.
Thanks for having me.
So excited. So you wear many hats in your life. So you're a director of communications at WeMost, you're a Coast Guard Reserve officer, you're a Columbia graduate. I want to start with your journey and how did you find your way into the maritime industry and communications and kind of what keeps you here?
Yes, so I will have to say it first started with communications. So growing up, I was always a communicator. I did speech competitions. I knew I was interested in public relations and marketing. I just didn't know what a career looked like in those fields whenever I was a kid. So I knew going to college that that was something that I was going to be interested in and want to pursue. So I'm actually from Oklahoma, Oklahoma City. So as you can imagine, we don't really have a maritime presence there. And we also don't have a Coast Guard presence there. So the way I found myself into the industry was I attended Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. In my freshman year there, I learned about the Coast Guard College Student Pre-Commissioning Initiative, which is a scholarship program that's equivalent to ROTC in the other branches. And whenever I learned about that program, I was like, wait a minute. So I can do this program, get my bachelor's, my master's paid for, have a full-time job. Like, what 18-year-old would not see that as like a great opportunity? So my freshman year, I decided that I was going to apply for this program. So fast forward, I end up getting accepted. I go through basic training the summer after my sophomore year in college. And then after I graduated from Spelman, I commissioned as an officer in the Coast Guard. And my first assignment as an ensign was aboard the Coast Guard Bark Eagle, which is a tall ship. And I really wanted to be assigned to that ship in particular because it is the Goodwill Ambassador training platform, public affairs vessel of this country, essentially. So basically, what the ship does is it about 6 months out of the year, it will travel to different U.S. ports as well as overseas, and it will host foreign governments and militaries for different receptions for Goodwill Ambassador initiatives. So I had to work with public affairs for the Coast Guard, with the State Department, with the Department of Homeland Security, in order to create our communication plan for each of our deployments. So that was really my first job as a communicator and in maritime. So that was basically my introduction. And from there, I knew I wanted to stay in communications. I knew that this was something for me, that it was really interesting and it was fun. And I started learning on during that tour on the Bark Eagle that communications could look so different. It transcends all industries. Everyone needs an effective communicator, and you can basically go anywhere with it. So from there, that was about 10 years ago. And from there, I've really just transitioned to different parts of my career. I love being in the Coast Guard. I love being able to serve my country. And so after 7 years of active duty, I decided that I was going to take a different career path and be able to, so I could pursue communications full time. But because I love my service so much, I decided to stay in the reserves. So I've been in the Coast Guard for about 10 years now.
I love that story. And I think it's so true when you talked about like communications is everywhere. I
Mhm.
started my career in journalism and always gravitated more towards the industrial space, which was interesting for me because previously I wanted to write for the New York Times because every journalist you see on in every movie ever known, that's the only place they work. And so, but you don't hear about all the other pieces. And so then I transitioned from journalism to marketing, and that's how I feel too. Like it's there. It needs to be there. It's in every space, in every place. You just have to find it and then market things differently or communicate things differently, which is really cool. So I'm glad you kind of share that joy and passion there.
Thank you.
Obviously, your journey then led you to WIMO. So I would love for you to
Did.
tell our audience kind of more about the organization and its mission.
Yes. Okay. So while I was active duty in the Coast Guard, stationed down in Houston, Texas, one of the girls on my team, so once I moved to Houston, I was inspecting U.S. and foreign flag ships. And so one of the girls on my team went out to one of the shipyards to do a barge inspection. And that's when Casey Eckstein, the founder of WIMOs, came running up to her and was like, "Hey, we hardly ever see female Coast Guard inspectors. We would love to do a joint event with the Coast Guard." So the girl comes back and she said, "Hey, Miss Brooks, like this is basically what happened. I don't know what to do with this information. I'll pass it to you." So I said, "Okay, sounds good." So I learned more about it. I spoke with my command and we ended up hosting a joint event at the unit where we had about 30 WIMOS members come for a lunch and learn. I hosted on the Coast Guard side and the Houston chapter hosted on the WIMOS side. And that was my first introduction to WIMOS. And for me, at that point, I think I'd been in the Coast Guard about 5 or 6 years. I was just floored. I hadn't done anything or joined a professional organization outside of the military yet. So this was my first introduction to a professional network of women who also worked in maritime, who were in different points in their career, and they offer free membership to active duty military members. So then again, I'm like, why would I not pursue this opportunity? Sounds amazing. So basically, WIMOS is a nonprofit organization of women. We currently have about 1,300 members across the United States, Canada, Nigeria, and Iran. So it's really amazing that we're starting to have this global expansion. We're about 8 years old, so still relatively new. We have about 13 different chapters across the United States primarily, and we're in the process of becoming a registered non-governmental organization in Nigeria. So really excited about that progression. Our members represent over 300 companies. We host more than 120 events each year. And basically, our mission is to recruit, retain, promote, and advance women with maritime careers.
I love that so much. And I came across you because we have a joint member, and she was like, "Oh, you should learn more about this." Of course, our goal is to be applicable to all modes of commercial transport, but admittedly, maritime doesn't reflect a lot of our membership, but we want it to, and we want to include more of that maritime space. And so, loved getting to hear about your journey and hearing more about WEMOS and how we could potentially support each other. I do think WEMOS is doing important work to support women in maritime. I love organizations that really, we are still a male dominated industry across the board in transportation and logistics, but the women are, rising, getting more and more places. I loved hearing about the different places you guys are going, how you guys are growing over the past couple years. Is I know you just touched on getting that in Nigeria, but is that the biggest impact that you are proud of so far in your time at WeMos, or is there something else you wanted to highlight?
Oh man. So I mean, I guess there's been a lot of great developments that we've had over the past few years. So I came on, bless you. I came on as our first part-time employee. So I transitioned after my tour in Houston, I transitioned into the Coast Guard Reserves, and then I moved up to New York City and went to grad school at Columbia to get my master's in communications. And this was the first time in my career where I was like, I am officially pursuing this as a career opportunity. I'm going in this direction. I have this love for communications and marketing, and I just want to explore that more. And so at that time, I'd already been a WIMOS member for about a year. And so they brought me on part-time as a social media intern. So at that point, this was in 2022, we barely had a social media presence. We had things on the website, but we weren't really telling our story. We hadn't done a survey, a member-wide survey, or had any type of like data report. So we were still so new and so young. So everything that's transpired since then, it's just been very exciting for me because I've been along that journey. So over the past few years since I've been with WIMOs, we have done a member-wide impact survey, and we've been able to not only share that digitally, but also digitally, as in on our website, but also in newsletters, annual reports, and videos. So we've gotten a lot more mature at telling our story, which for me, my perspective, I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what we needed to do to share the heart and soul of our organization. Other things that we're excited about is the fact that we are expanding globally and we are starting to receive strong interest from women abroad who are like, hey, we're also women in maritime and we want to start a WIMOS chapter here. So I work a lot with these C chapters, as we call them, where we have significant interest and they're wanting to create an official WIMOS chapter. So I work heavily in supporting those growing chapters. We also have launched a annual sponsorship menu, which is something that's helped us as a different revenue stream for the nonprofit, which is great that we have that opportunity. We're hosting more fundraising events across the country, which are aimed at engaging our members in the maritime community in those activities. For example, we host a clay shooting tournament, which several of our members, they've told us like, hey, we never shot guns before, but a lot of the guys in our office, they go on these hunting trips, they go to these clay shoot tournaments. And those are things I was never involved in because I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I'd never done it before. So not only are we providing clay shooting lessons, but we're also hosting an annual clay shoot to bring people in the community together and making it a more comfortable environment. Same with golfing as well. We have a golf tournament and do golfing lessons. Another thing that's really exciting that we've started over the last couple of years is a junior chapter at Texas A&M University. So something that we're really working on is creating this pipeline for young women who are studying maritime or who are interested in maritime, and they are trying to get their foot in the door. They're trying to see what that looks like. So we're starting these junior chapters at universities, and at some point it will also be expanded to high schools as well. And they're structured the same as an official WIMOS chapter, where they have lunch and learns, they have speaker events, and then they also are in close proximity to the Houston chapter, about an hour south. So they're able to have partnership with them. And the last thing I'll mention that we've been able to start up in the last couple of years is a mentoring program. So
Mm.
the mentoring program, the mentors have to be WIMOS members, and the mentees, or as we call them, our proteges, they can be any woman in the industry or interested in joining the industry. And we pair them with the WIMOS member. And so we now have over 120 women who are involved in that program. And it's just continuing to grow as we promote it at different conferences or on our website, social media, word of mouth, etc. So yeah, we have a lot of amazing things that WIMOS has grown to that we're excited for, and so many more places to go. But that's a few things that we've accomplished in the last few years.
I think that's amazing, especially because, like you said, you are the one paid staffer. So, like, what
Yes.
you're able to accomplish with your community is phenomenal. So, love
Thank
hearing all
you.
that. So, what advice would you give to other women in logistics or in maritime who are looking to build confidence in leadership and communication? I love that you guys have a mentorship program. That's something I want to get started, and we have like little pieces, but like holistically, I love that you guys were able to launch that. But besides that, what advice would you give?
Yes, my biggest piece of advice is to get connected. Join an organization, network with other people in the industry, people who have similar backgrounds, shared interests as you, because as you start getting more connected and meeting other people who have had certain challenges that you also share, you start realizing, it's not just me. There are other people out there who have similar experiences as me, and at least for me, it made me feel less alone in that struggle. So that's a reason I think I just loved WIMOs so much, and why I've been just so wholeheartedly involved in this organization for the last 4 years, 3 years as an employee, um, and 1 year as a member. And because just being able to build community and just, connect with people in such an authentic way, it makes me feel just more connected, and it makes me feel, more confident and assured in that, what I'm feeling is not unique to me, and there are other people who have experienced this, and then it just I don't know what else to say other than it makes me feel it makes me be able to bring my whole self to work, because then I'm like, "Okay, it's not just me. I'm good. So now I can continue on my way and get out of my head a bit." Hope that
Mhm.
makes sense.
I think that's really great advice. Obviously, we're both working for these nonprofits in this space that are all about connecting people. And I think that getting involved, getting connected is a huge piece of that. I think, in terms of leadership, one of the best things I did was become a mentor because
Mm,
I had like a terrible, and I still do, is getting a little bit better, but like an imposter syndrome because I'm like, oh,
yes.
like I don't know what I'm talking about ever. And
Yeah.
but other people think I do, which is great. And I love that. But um, it wasn't until I started really mentoring the people who are really up and coming, those coming out of college, those like fresh into their careers, where I was like, oh, I really do have something to offer. Like I'm in this
Yes.
midpoint-ish of my career. So
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm this person that's been in this space forever that has all of the answers, but I started to realize like, oh, I do provide value and they are looking to me for this type of advice. And that helped me substantially.
Yeah.
And it pushed me. Like I remember the first time I applied to be a mentor, it pushed, and it was at like a women in STEM program, which felt really uncomfortable for me because I never thought of myself as like super math or techie, but I was
Mhm.
working at a tech firm at the time as a marketer, but still. And so like pushing myself out of that comfort zone, exploring my own horizons and then helping the people who are upcoming, and just like we talked about at the beginning, like communications marketing, it's everywhere, but how can we make it applicable to the spaces we're working in? So that was like a huge thing for me, is realizing I do provide value, and helped me become a more confident and competent leader because I was shaping that as I went along. So that's always my advice. Don't be afraid to be a mentee or a mentor.
Absolutely. And I will say that it's something that I'm glad I found relatively junior in my career. So whenever I was active duty, and even now, like being in the Coast Guard, as an officer, you are put into leadership positions very junior in your career. So whenever I was stationed on the ship, I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. I majored in economics and Spanish, so I had no navigation background. And now I'm managing, initially was a team of two, and they were subject matter experts. They were probably mid-30s at the time, and I was very intimidated. I
Mhm.
was very intimidated because I felt like I'm being put in this completely new position of responsibility, with something I don't have a background in. So imposter syndrome was real. And I was also lacked so much confidence in myself during that period of my life, questioned everything I said, everything I did, because I just felt like I was not qualified for the role I was entrusted to be in by the Coast Guard and by my leadership. And so I had a really hard time in that role for so many different reasons. And I think at that point in my career, if I would have had that support system on the ship of um, being able to connect with people, especially since we were gone so much. It's like really hard to have community when you're stationed on a ship if the people that you're on a ship with aren't in that community for you,
Mhm.
like people that you connect with really well. So that's why whenever I found WIMOs, I was like, wow, this is amazing because it's other women who have been like, yes, I've had imposter syndrome. Yes, I've really struggled. Or whenever I've spoken to women who have been full-time employees, have children, and it's just like amazing to hear the different experiences people have. And I think the beauty of WIMOs is that it really brings people together from so many different backgrounds, but you can come together and be like, oh, that's amazing. What have you done? And then just being able to talk about that. That's why I say, being able to create that connection in a very authentic way. And it makes you feel more comfortable and confident and being able to show up to work because you realize like you aren't the only one who has that experience. So, yeah, it's been life changing for me. And that's why I really try and promote the organization because I see the difference is made for me. So I know it'll be able to make a difference for other people as well.
Mhm. I do think there's a lot of crossover between your military service and then your nonprofit work at WIMOS,
Yeah,
particularly when we're talking about like teamwork, resilience, mission driven focus. Do you feel like
yeah,
those two roles really complement each other?
absolutely. Absolutely. Because, in order to, especially with the limited resources, um, that you have working for a nonprofit, especially for a very small nonprofit where you are the only full-time employee and you have to stay focused and you have to really understand what the big picture is and like how can I convey that and get that across. It's very similar with being in the Coast Guard because we are such an important branch of the military and we have very limited resources. So as I wear many hats right now in my life, I've always had to wear many hats, especially like growing up being the oldest of four siblings, being a daughter, also being, very involved in everything I did, band, sports, everything. So even from a young age, like I had to wear many hats and I had to show up in different ways. And it's been the same as an adult as well. And so now working for WIMOS, it's I'm just keeping on, doing what I do, honestly, because I've already been conditioned for this. And I think that that's why the board of directors and I work really well together is because they understand like where I'm coming from and what I bring to the table. And it's, I think, just a beautiful blend of just cultures and backgrounds to be able to make Wemos into what it is today. So, yes.
I love that. And I'm
Yes.
excited to announce one of the reasons why we're having you on the show and talking about all this stuff is that we are doing a joint webinar, TMSA and
Woohoo!
WIMOS. It will be on August 26th. And as I mentioned, I'm having tech issues, so we're doing this interview in Zoom and not on our normal streaming platform, but we will put the registration link in the show notes instead of popping it nicely on the screen like I normally do. However, I'm really pumped about it. What we're going to do is we're going to feature a TMSA member, so IMC Logistics will be coming on, and then WeMos member Port Houston will also be coming on. And we're talking about the full scope of what happens in all of the parts of logistics because we felt like sometimes people who are more on land don't understand what happens in the maritime and vice versa. So we wanted to
Mhm.
do this joint collaboration. So, what are you looking forward to for this webinar?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to be able to partner with TMSA and really start this foundation of partnership. Also, being able to share what not only WEMOS is, what we do, but also the importance of the maritime industry and how it's vital for commerce across the country and also how maritime connects us globally as well. So, yeah, I'm really excited for this joint webinar and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So if you want to learn about port to pavement, join us on August 26th. You will hear from both organizations and both of our members. I'm really looking forward to this because one of my missions as the executive director at TMSA is to really serve all commercial modes of transport and make sure that we're providing education and resourcing for all of those. And I think one of the ways we can do that best is by partnering with other industry associations that we cover everything for sales and marketing people. But then we have these other wonderful industry associations that are segmented to one of the commercial modes. And so being able to partner with stuff like this and expand both of our educations, I think is pretty powerful for both organizations. So I'm excited about it and looking forward to August 26th. So hopefully all of you guys will join us. And that takes me to my last question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. And if you could go back in time and advise a younger self anything, personally or professionally, when would you go back to and what would you tell her?
Mm. I would go back to myself my junior, senior year in high school, and I would tell her that yes, Angelica, you are planned and you are type A, and the older you get, the more you will become rooted in that.
Hmm.
However, life doesn't always go according to plan, and that is okay. And whenever you embrace change and opportunities as they come, you will be able to explore and experience so much that is outside of your realm of imagination. Because as a young person who grew up in a relatively small city, your scope is relatively narrow. And then the more you speak to people, the more you get out and experience and explore, the broader your scope will become. So don't limit yourself. It's okay. Change is inevitable. Just roll with it. So I think that's what I would tell her.
I think I'm still learning how to roll with it and accept change, but it's a good lesson for us all. Um, Thank you so much for coming on the
Thanks for
show and sharing
having
your
me.
journey. I do want to give a special shout out to Alexa at Open Tug, who connected us and does so much for both of our organizations. And excited to continue to work with her. I know she has a personal mission to get more maritime folks into TMSA. So love that. This will be our last on the move for the summer as everybody goes into, kind of more personal life. We thought we would take a little breaky break. But fun fact about On the Move, we only feature people that are associated with TMSA. So either industry partnerships like WIMOs, our members, our speakers, any of that. So if you're interested in coming on the show, we will be back in September and we're excited to highlight. So we will also put the link to come on the show, tell us what you want to highlight, and we will see everybody in the fall. But don't forget August 28th or 26th, August 26th, the WIMOS and TMSA webinar. Um,
Yes.
and excited for all of the above and to get back into the swing of things. So thank you, Angelica, for coming on the show and for
Thanks for
partnering on
having
this
me.
webinar. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I will catch you guys all in a few months. Bye bye.